I awakened the most useless F-rank ability in history. It can reset any designated non-living object within a 1-meter radius, back to its original state. But in practice, refreshing a book just gives you the same book. Refreshing a towel just gives you the same towel. So 3 months into the zombie apocalypse, my girlfriend grabbed the last half-pack of crackers and walked out on me without looking back, straight into another man's car. Before she left, she tossed an empty instant noodle cup at my feet, like throwing scraps to a dog. Don't blame me, babe. Your ability is completely useless. If I stay with you, I'll starve to death. In despair, I stared at that empty cup, and a wild thought flashed through my mind. Refresh! A rich, savory beef aroma exploded in the air. Beneath the torn wrapper lay a perfectly arranged noodle cake and 3 seasoning packets. I froze. My ability wasn't useless. We had all misunderstood it completely. Resetting to its original state didn't mean the state from 1 second ago. It meant the state from the very moment it first existed. An empty instant noodle cup. Its original state was a brand new, factory-sealed cup of noodles. My heart was pounding wildly in my chest. Not from fear, but from pure, explosive excitement. I looked around the looted convenience store. The shelves were littered with torn snack wrappers and empty drink bottles. To everyone else, this was trash, but to me, it was an endless treasure. I didn't rush to make the noodles. In the apocalypse, any food smell could attract unwanted visitors. I carefully climbed up to the second-floor storage room of the convenience store, then barricaded the entrance with heavy shelving units. Only after confirming it was safe did I begin my experiment. I placed an empty noodle cup on the floor, and whispered in my mind, "Refresh." A barely visible ripple flashed across the cup, and instantly, another brand new cup of noodles appeared. Again, I held back my joy and kept going. 10 minutes later, a mountain of 60 noodle cups towered in front of me. My ability had a 10-second cooldown, which meant unlimited noodles, forever. Then my eyes landed on an empty water bottle nearby. Refresh. Instantly, a full 500-milliliter bottle of clean water appeared. I turned to a first aid kit on the floor, nothing left but the empty shell. Refresh. A brand new first aid kit appeared in my hands. My breathing quickened. Food, water, medicine, the most precious supplies in the apocalypse, were now unlimited for me. Lily, you thought my ability was worthless? Just wait. One day you'll be on your knees, begging me for a bite of food. For the next 3 days, I locked myself in that storage room. The mountains of empty packaging piled up in there became my raw materials. Chips, crackers, chocolate, anything that could fill a stomach, I refreshed into boxes and boxes of supplies. Drinks and bottled water filled up half the room. Most importantly, I found an empty gas canister. With a portable camp stove from the store strapped to my back, I could finally eat something hot. After shutting every window in the room, I boiled a pot of water, tore open 3 seasoning packets, and gently lowered the noodle cake in. When that long-forgotten aroma hit my nose, my tears finally came. I cried and ate at the same time, wolfing it all down. It was the most filling, most peaceful meal I'd had since the apocalypse began. With a full stomach, my mind started to clear. Hiding here wasn't a long-term plan. The zombies would eventually break in, or other survivors would find this place. I needed to find a safer base, and I needed weapons. Having food and water alone would just make me a target, a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. I stuffed all my supplies into 2 massive hiking backpacks, then cracked the door open, and scanned outside. A few zombies wandered aimlessly through the streets. I took a deep breath and tightened my grip on a fruit knife I had refreshed. Sharp as the day it was made. Time to move. Leaving the store went smoother than expected. I used the maze of back alleys to dodge most of the zombies. When I came across a stray one, I smashed a freshly refreshed full can of soda into it, and while it staggered, finished it off with a knife. My destination was Blue Bay Community on the west side of the city, a well-known upscale residential complex. With a solid security system and tall, thick walls, it should have held up in the early days of the apocalypse. More importantly, my parents lived there. When the apocalypse hit, I was at school and lost contact with them. Finding them was the only thing driving me forward. But the road to Blue Bay Community was far harder than I'd imagined. The city had completely collapsed. Abandoned vehicles choked every main road. Along the way, I witnessed too many horrors. Violent clashes over scraps of supplies. In that moment, I understood with painful clarity that Lily's betrayal was perhaps just the smallest piece of a much crueler world. Here, humanity had already fallen apart. By the evening of the 3rd day, I finally reached the outer perimeter of Blue Bay Community. The tall iron gates were shut tight, and faint silhouettes stood guard along the walls. It had indeed become a survivor's stronghold. I watched from a distance for a long time. Getting inside meant going through their screening, so I reorganized my pack, hiding most of my supplies in a hidden drainage tunnel, keeping only 2 bottles of water and 1 pack of crackers, and played the role of an ordinary refugee heading toward the gate. "Halt! Who's there?" A sharp shout came from the wall above. I raised both hands and looked up, showing a face caked in dust and grime. "I'm a resident here. My name is Evan Lin. My unit is in Building 17. Building 17, Evan Lin." The person above went quiet, apparently checking via radio. A moment later, the iron gate cracked open just slightly, and a man stepped out, gripping a steel pipe, his face tight with suspicion. "ED," he said bluntly. I pulled out my ID, ready and waiting, and handed it over. He checked it, then looked me up and down. "Just you? Where are your supplies?" I lowered my head, my voice carrying just the right amount of choked fear. "Everything was taken from me on the way here. This is all I have left." The man frowned, looking skeptical, but faced with my scrawny frame and pitiful appearance, He finally let his guard down. "Come in. Remember the rules. All newcomers must hand over half their supplies for communal distribution." My chest tightened at that, but thankfully I had planned ahead. I nodded obediently and handed over 1 bottle of water and half the pack of crackers. The man took them, a flicker of contempt crossing his eyes, but he waved me through anyway. Once inside, the scene gave me some relief. Tense, yes, but at least there was order. People were patrolling, others were reinforcing the defenses, and women and children were sheltered together in the community clubhouse. This place was like an island in the apocalypse, temporarily cut off from the blood and chaos outside. A woman handling registrations told me. The community was now run by someone called Boss Leo, the former property manager. After the apocalypse, he awakened an Earth-type ability and organized a security team to protect everyone. Every resident received a daily food ration based on their contribution points. Those who wanted more had to join the patrol team or the logistics unit. I used poor health as an excuse and stayed out of any group for now. My immediate priority was finding my parents. But when I ran anxiously all the way to our front door, I found the security door forced open and the apartment ransacked. My heart sank. I rushed inside, screaming for Mom and Dad. Only dead silence answered me. A thin layer of dust coated the living room coffee table. They had been gone for at least several days. There were signs of a struggle on the floor, but no blood. A small mercy in a hopeless situation. I collapsed to the floor, seized by a helplessness and fear I had never felt before. I had no idea where to look for them. Just as I sat there, lost and hollow, footsteps echoed outside the door. A sneering voice called out, Well, looks like we missed one." I snapped my head up. 2 men were blocking the doorway. The one in front was shaved, bald, sizing me up with a predatory grin. I recognized him. He was one of Boss Leo's lieutenants, Scorpion. Scorpion licked his lips, looking at me like a piece of meat on a cutting board. "The registered owner of this unit racked up a debt with Boss Leo a few days ago. They got kicked out. This place belongs to us now." My eyes narrowed. "What did you do to my parents?" "Relax, we just kicked them out. That's what happens to useless people in the apocalypse. But you look like you got some fight in you. Stick around, run some errands for us, and maybe we'll let you eat." I had been so naive, thinking this place was a safe haven. Turns out it's the same here. The strong prey on the weak. As they moved closer, my hand quietly reached for the side pocket of my bag, where a freshly refreshed fruit knife waited. But just as I braced myself to fight, a cool, firm female voice cut through from the doorway. "Stand down!" Scorpion and his partner froze in unison. When they saw who it was, their smirks vanished, replaced instantly by fawning smiles. The woman in the doorway wore all black combat gear. She carried a tang saber at her side, dark red blood still clinging to the blade, and behind her stood several equally formidable squad members. I recognized her. She was Lena, captain of Sharp Blade Squad, the most elite fighting unit in the security team. Rumor had it she had awakened a rare ability called Precision, with power that was impossible to measure, and she was Boss Leo's most trusted weapon. Lena ignored Scorpion entirely. Her gaze settled on me and she asked quietly, "What's going on here?" I grabbed at the lifeline. "They were trying to rob me." Scorpion's face shifted. He scrambled to explain. "Commander, don't listen to his lies. His parents owed contribution points. We were just here to claim the unit." "Since when does claiming a unit require 2 men blocking the door?" Her voice was quiet, but it carried an unmistakable authority. "Get out, now." Scorpion looked like he'd just been pardoned from execution. He grabbed his partner and bolted. With the threat gone, the tension drained from my body, and I nearly fell. Lena glanced at me, a slight frown on her face. "Stay away from those people." She said it like a warning, not an invitation, and turned to leave. I called after her quickly. "Commander Lena, do you know where my parents were sent?" "Their names are Frank and Susan Lin." Lena thought for a moment. "I remember them. Boss Leo dumped everyone who couldn't work or fight, the elderly, the weak, the sick, at the abandoned factory outside the north gate. He called it letting them fend for themselves." My chest clenched hard. An abandoned factory. No food, no protection. That was as good as a death sentence. The moment Lena left, I shut the door. I had to get to that factory. I had to find Mom and Dad. But first, I needed to arm myself. I pulled a chocolate bar from my pack, shoved it down in 2 bites to restore my energy, then turned my eyes to the steel pipe Scorpion had left on the floor, rusted, even slightly bent. I pressed my hand against it. Refresh. A brand new steel pipe appeared in my hand, gleaming with a cold metallic sheen. That wasn't enough. I ran to the kitchen and found my dad's old outdoor survival kit, which held a multi-tool entrenching shovel, a survival hatchet, and a combat knife, all dulled from years of sitting untouched. Refresh. All 3 blades instantly snapped back to the razor-sharp edge they had on the day they were made. When darkness fell, I slipped through the gap between patrol shifts and crept to the north gate. It was far more desolate than the main entrance. Just 2 guards yawning at their post. I didn't disturb them. Instead, I found a blind spot in the cameras and used a freshly refreshed rope to scale the wall, over 3 meters high, without breaking a sweat. Outside the wall was wasteland. In the distance, the silhouette of a factory loomed, like a silent beast of steel. The air reeked of rot. Somewhere in the dark, zombies groaned. I gripped my steel pipe, crouched low, and moved fast toward the factory. But the closer I got, the more zombies there were. I ducked behind a crumbled wall and saw at least a dozen zombies clustered at the factory gate, drawn by something inside, slamming their bodies against the sealed iron doors. From behind those doors came faint cries and screams. Mom and Dad were in there. Panic burned through me. But reason held me back. I couldn't rush in blind. I scanned the area and spotted a row of high windows along the factory's side wall, about 4 meters up. That could be my way in. My mind was made up. I moved. I grabbed a loose rock, and hurled it with everything I had at an abandoned car down the road. It struck the window with a sharp crack. The zombies at the gate took the bait, turning sluggishly and shambling toward the sound. I seized the moment, sprinting to the factory wall, pulled out my rope, tied a climbing pick to one end, and swung it hard. The pick caught firm on the window ledge. I took a breath, climbed hand over hand, pulled myself through the window and dropped inside. It was a massive production floor. Rusted machines and scattered parts everywhere, with only thin slivers of moonlight falling through the broken roof. From the far end of the floor came muffled crying and arguing. I followed the sounds, moving carefully through the dark. In a corner barricaded by broken-down machinery, I found dozens of survivors. Most of them were elderly or children. I spotted my parents instantly. They were huddled in the corner, Mom clutching her knees, crying without a sound, while Dad held her close, whispering comfort. My eyes went red immediately. I called out to them, my voice breaking. Everyone startled and turned at once. Mom and Dad snapped their heads up, and the moment they saw me, shock melted into overwhelming joy. Mom let out a cry and scrambled toward me. The three of us, in this hopeless apocalypse, held each other tightly. The joy of being reunited washed away every fear and every ounce of despair, but the moment was cut short by a harsh voice. "Hey, where did you come from?" A man with a long scar across his face stepped forward, a group of muscular young men behind him, clearly the one in charge here. His eyes locked onto my bulging backpack, burning with greed. "Impressive, kid. Making it here alone. What's in the bag? Show everyone." I stepped in front of my parents and met his eyes coldly. "It's mine." "Yours?" Scar let out a short, contemptuous laugh. "Nothing belongs to anyone here. It all belongs to me. Hand over the bag if you're smart. Or else." He swung his cleaver slowly, the threat needing no further explanation. His crew moved in behind him, circling like wolves. The elderly and weak who had been dumped here watched in silence, furious but powerless, their eyes filled with helpless sympathy for me. My dad quickly pulled me behind him, forcing a smile at Scar. "Sir, my son doesn't know how things work here. There's just a little food in the bag. Take it all. Just don't hurt him." "Too late," Scar sneered, his face twisting with cruelty. "I don't just want the bag anymore, I want his life." The words barely left his mouth before he lunged for me. My eyes went cold. I didn't step back. I stepped forward, and drove the steel pipe into his wrist at a sharp, precise angle. A sharp crack rang out. Scar's wrist bent at a grotesque angle. Everyone froze. Nobody had expected the scrawny kid to fight back. Scar broke into a cold sweat from the pain, his face twisted with rage. "You dare hit me? Get him! All of you! I'll make him wish he were dead!" His crew snapped out of their shock and charged at me, yelling. I tossed the backpack to my parents and raised the pipe to meet them. One swung a wooden club at my head. I twisted aside, flicked my wrist and drove the other end of the pipe into his weak point. He screamed and crumpled to the ground. No wasted movement. Every strike targeted a vulnerable joint, just enough to protect myself. What scared them even more was that I never seemed to tire. After I dropped two of them, the rest hesitated, too afraid to move in. Scar clutched his broken wrist, staring at me in shock and fury. "Who are you? Are you an ability user?" I didn't answer. I just stared at him with cold, unblinking eyes. Every ounce of suffering I had endured over these months of apocalypse ignited in this moment into a blaze of fury. Walk away, or die. The sheer ferocity in my voice silenced the room. Scar's expression flickered. He hadn't expected to hit a wall like this, but just as we stood at a standoff, the factory's iron doors let out a thunderous boom, then a second, then a third. The crowd erupted into panic. "The zombies are ramming the gate. What's happening? Why are they suddenly going crazy?" Fear spread through the crowd like a plague. Even Scar forgot about me. He and his crew threw their bodies against the buckling doors, piling debris to hold them shut. But there were too many zombies. The doors were warping under the impact, the bolt groaning. It could give way any second. Despair settled over everyone. My parents trembled beside me, gripping my hand. I took one look at the doors. Old, heavily rusted iron. A bold idea formed in my mind. I picked up my steel pipe and walked toward the doors, every pair of eyes in the room watching in disbelief. "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" One of Scar's men screamed at me from behind the door. I ignored him and pressed my hand flat against the cold, rusted surface. Then, before everyone's unbelieving eyes, a miracle unfolded. The battered, dented iron doors smoothed out as if time itself were reversing, every dent vanishing, the warped frame straightening back to perfect. In an instant, a gleaming steel gate stood before them, factory new and immovable. The zombies outside slammed against it, but it didn't budge, absorbing each blow with a deep, muffled thud. The entire factory floor fell dead silent. Every single person stared at me, speechless. Scar's jaw hung open, the pain in his wrist completely forgotten. He pointed at me, stuttering. Your ability, it's repair." I didn't bother explaining. I pulled my hand back and looked at him coldly. In the apocalypse, power was the only currency that mattered. The ruthlessness I had shown, combined with what they had just witnessed, had completely shattered Scar's nerve. He looked at me, and the greed in his eyes was gone, replaced by deep, unmistakable fear. "Boss, I had no idea who I was dealing with. I was blind. Please, don't hold it against me." I said nothing. I walked to my parents. Mom looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Pride, worry, and something like not quite recognizing the person in front of her. I took her hand and gave her a look that said everything was okay. "Mom, don't be scared. I've got you." Then I reached into the backpack and pulled out a self-heating rice meal, a sausage, and a bottle of clean water and handed them over. "Mom, Dad, eat something first." The smell of food instantly drew every eye in the room. The survivors, who hadn't eaten in who knows how long, stared at the food in my parents' hands, their throats working with audible swallows, their eyes hollow with hunger. Scar and his crew were practically bug-eyed. In a world where food was worth more than gold, I had produced all of this without even blinking, and that shook them even more than fixing the gate had. When it was done, I turned back to Scar. From this moment on, I'm in charge here. My voice was calm, but it reached every corner of that room. Scar's face twitched. Then slowly his head dropped. Taking over the factory went smoother than I expected. In the face of absolute power and limitless supplies, whatever authority Scar wanted crumbled instantly. I didn't drive them away. Manpower was a resource too. I put them on guard duty and zombie clearing operations nearby, while I handled food and logistics. Every day I locked myself in a private room pretending to take inventory, while actually refreshing food and every other essential supply at full speed. When crate after crate of fresh supplies appeared before them, everyone looked at me with awe. They all assumed I had some kind of spatial ability, with a pocket dimension full of stockpiled goods. With enough food and a secure shelter, the survivors slowly came back to life. Under my management, the entire abandoned factory became organized and efficient. Mom and Dad became my most trusted helpers, managing people and distributing supplies. They found their dignity and purpose again among the group, and their spirits lifted more with every passing day. Everything was moving in the right direction, but there was still something gnawing at me. Boss Leo, the former property manager of Blue Bay Community, who had thrown defenseless, elderly people like my parents out to fend for themselves, that debt would be repaid, sooner or later. Besides, Blue Bay Community's defenses and living conditions were far superior to this rundown factory. I wanted to give my parents and everyone who followed me a real home, something more stable and secure. It was time to go pay Boss Leo a visit. A week later, I was fully prepared. Using my refresh ability, I restored every abandoned electric vehicle I found in the factory to its original factory condition, fully charged, and refreshed dozens of brand new protective suits, safety helmets, and steel-toed boots. For weapons, in addition to steel pipes and hatchets, I had my people grind factory steel into dozens of sharp spears. As for Scar and his inner circle, they were completely loyal to me now. I kept them fed and clothed. In the apocalypse, that was a debt greater than life itself. I picked the 20 strongest people, Scar among them. Before we set out, I looked at my assembled team and said simply, "We're not going there to beg. We're going to take back what was always ours. Blue Bay Community has solid walls, comfortable homes, and we are going to build a real home there. Everyone who's with me, get in." Not one person hesitated. After everything they had seen me do, their trust in me was absolute, almost blind. A convoy of 20, moving with purpose, rolled toward Blue Bay Community. When we reached the north gate of Blue Bay Community, the guards on the wall had already spotted us. They stared at our well-equipped convoy, visibly thrown off. "Scar, weren't you kicked out? What are you doing back here?" Scar, now my devoted second, straightened his back and answered with full confidence. "We're here to negotiate a partnership with Boss Leo." "A partnership with you lot?" The guard snorted. At that, I stepped out of the vehicle and walked to the front. "Tell Boss Leo," I said calmly, "that Evan Lin is back." The guard didn't know me, but seeing me at the center of the group, he could tell I wasn't someone to dismiss, and after a moment's hesitation, he radioed it up. Soon the north gate swung open, and Boss Leo came out with a large crowd behind him, including Lena, captain of Sharp Blade Squad. Boss Leo was a heavy-set man in his mid-40s, with sharp, arrogant eyes. He took in our convoy, our brand new gear, our sharp and well-fed look, and a flicker of surprise and greed crossed his face. Well, if it isn't young Evan Lin. Haven't seen you in a few days. Where'd you come into all this good fortune?" "Let's skip the small talk, Boss Leo. I'm here to move my people into Blue Bay Community." Boss Leo reacted as if he just heard the funniest thing in years, breaking into a loud, booming laugh. "Evan, did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed? Blue Bay Community is my territory. What gives you the right to walk in?" "This," I snapped my fingers. Behind me, Scar hoisted up a crate and opened it, packed full of sealed, factory-fresh compressed crackers. Boss Leo's laughter stopped dead. Behind him, the guards all drew a sharp breath. Blue Bay Community had strong defenses but a large population and a constant food shortage. Their daily ration was nothing more than a piece of dark bread. Where did you get all this food?" "You don't need to know where it came from. I'm only asking you one thing. Deal or no deal?" Boss Leo's eyes flickered. "And what kind of deal are you proposing?" "Simple. My people move in, we supply a portion of the food, you handle security, we co-manage the community." At that, Boss Leo's expression darkened. "Kid, that's quite an appetite you've got. I'm the leader of this base. Why on earth would I share power with some nobody who showed up out of nowhere? Those are my terms. If you don't agree, we'll take it by force." "Take it by force? Ha! With your 20-something people?" "Lena!" At his command, Lena and every member of Sharp Blade Squad stepped forward in unison, a wave of lethal intent rolling off them like a cold wind. Sharp Blade Squad was Blue Bay's ace, every member a battle-hardened ability user. My people tensed up immediately. Only I didn't flinch. I looked at Lena, the woman who had helped me once before. She was looking back at me, curiosity and surprise in her eyes. "Commander Lena, do you really think we can't get in?" Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mr. Lin, you're clearly capable, but Blue Bay Community has 200 security personnel. Forcing your way in won't end well for you." It was a genuine warning. Boss Leo smirked with satisfaction. "You hear that? Don't push your luck. Hand over all your food and I might let you and your parents in, as ordinary residents. As for your people, send them back where they came from." So that was his answer: swallow all my supplies, and drive away everyone loyal to me. Quite the scheme. I smiled. "Looks like we're done talking. I slowly raised my right hand and aimed it at the tallest residential tower behind them. I looked them in the eye and said, "One word at a time. I'll give you one last chance. Let me in, or I make that building disappear." My words dropped the entire scene into an eerie silence. Then it exploded into deafening laughter. Boss Leo laughed until his eyes watered. "Lena, you hear this? That's the funniest thing I've heard all year." But Lena didn't laugh. She just stared at me, her expression grave and unreadable. Something told her I wasn't joking. I wasn't. I let my smile fade and began counting down. Boss Leo's smile froze. The laughter died. People exchanged glances, a creeping unease setting in. That 30-story tower was the landmark of Blue Bay community, and where most of the security team's families lived. When I counted down to 1, Boss Leo finally roared, all bluster and no backbone. "You're bluffing, take him down." But it was already too late. The moment I finished counting, I unleashed my ability, not an object within 1 meter, but pushing its range to the absolute limit in an instant. I aimed at the tower standing 100 meters away and whispered in my mind, "Refresh." The world went silent, as if someone had hit mute. Before the eyes of hundreds of horrified onlookers, the 30-story tower began to flicker violently, like a television losing its signal, its outline blurring, becoming translucent. In just 1 second, the entire building and everything inside it simply ceased to exist. All that remained was a bare, empty foundation, as if it had never been there at all. Every face in the crowd froze, expressions locked in blank shock and a terror that had no words. Boss Leo's men completely broke. They dropped their weapons and ran screaming in every direction, as if fleeing the end of the world itself. Boss Leo himself collapsed straight down to the ground, his face ash-gray, lips trembling, unable to speak a single word. His 200 security personnel, his greatest pride, crumbled in an instant. Lena and Sharp Blade Squad didn't break, but every one of their faces was carved with shock and awe. The hand gripping her tang saber trembled slightly. She looked at me, and the look in her eyes had completely changed. No longer the look one gives a capable survivor, but the look of someone gazing upon a god walking among men. I slowly lowered my hand and walked to where Boss Leo had crumpled on the ground. He looked up at me, the way you'd look at a monster, his whole body shaking uncontrollably. "Now, can my people come in?" Boss Leo nodded frantically and scrambled out of the way. I didn't spare him another glance. I turned to face Scar and the rest, who were equally stunned. "Move in!" My team snapped out of their daze. They looked at me with a fervor that bordered on worship. They knew I was powerful, but they had never imagined this, erasing an entire building. What kind of power was that? With a leader like this, surviving the apocalypse was no longer a question. Our group moved forward, every pair of eyes in Blue Bay community watching in reverent silence. As we rolled in, no one dared stand in our way. Lena and Sharp Blade Squad fell in silently behind us, as if escorting us in. I knew, from this day forward, Blue Bay community had a new owner. The first thing I did after moving in was settle accounts. Boss Leo and his inner circle, those who had bullied and exploited everyone, were locked up. I didn't kill them. I simply took away their abilities. My refresh ability, after evolving, could now be applied to living beings. I could refresh a person's body, restoring them to their healthiest condition, and naturally, I could also refresh their ability core, reverting it to its original state before awakening. When Boss Leo went from an Earth-type ability user to a powerless ordinary man, his spirit shattered completely. As for Lena and Sharp Blade Squad, I chose to bring them to my side. They were true fighters, with integrity intact, which was a rare thing in the apocalypse. In front of Lena, I refreshed a tang saber whose blade had been chipped and rolled from battle, then refreshed a box of nearly expired antibiotics, restoring them to factory-fresh condition. Lena watched it all and finally understood. My ability wasn't spatial and it wasn't restoration. It was something she couldn't comprehend. A power that operated on the level of natural law itself. She was silent for a long time. Then she bowed her head to me. "Sharp Blade Squad, from this day forward is yours to command." With Sharp Blade Squad under my command, I truly held Blue Bay community in my hands. I established new rules. Everyone, ability user or not, would receive food in exchange for contributing their labor. With unlimited supplies, I won people's loyalty fast. At the same time, I rooted out every bad element in the community. Under my leadership, Blue Bay community was transformed, vibrant and full of life. My parents watched all of this with pride and quiet relief. They never asked what my ability really was. They only knew their son had grown up and become someone everyone could depend on. Once the base was running smoothly, I began asking a deeper question. Where was the true limit of my ability? Refreshing noodles, refreshing a building. Could I refresh a living person? I found a security team member who had been clawed by a zombie during a fight and had already begun to turn. Everyone believed he was beyond saving. I sent everyone out, shut the door, and placed my hand on his forehead. A soft white light enveloped him. His agonized screams slowly faded. The mutation receded at a visible pace. I watched his wounds close, and a storm of emotion surged through me. I had done it. I had restored his body to its original state before the infection. That meant the zombie virus was no longer a death sentence, not while I was here. This discovery excited me far more than erasing an entire building had. If I could cure the zombie virus, did that mean I could save more people? Maybe even end the apocalypse itself? A grand plan began to take shape inside me. But before any of that, I had one personal matter to settle. I called Lena in and asked if she had any recent intel on a survivor group called Inferno, the group led by Blaze, a peak D rank pyrokinesis user, and where my ex-girlfriend Lily had ended up. Lena pulled up a map and pointed to a large supermarket on the east side. According to our intel, they've taken over that location, the biggest faction on the east side. The leader is Blaze, a peak D-rank pyrokinesis user. A cold glint crossed my eyes. Tomorrow we'll go pay our neighbors a visit. The next day I took only Lena and Sharp Blade Squad. We drove a refreshed armored off-roader straight through the city and pulled up outside the supermarket. The supermarket had been fortified into a solid stronghold. Armed guards lined the walls. Our arrival put them on alert immediately. "Who's there? Identify yourselves." Lena leaned out and called out clearly. "Blue Bay Base. Evan Lin is here to visit the leader of Inferno Base, Blaze." The guards clearly hadn't heard my name before. The Blue Bay Base, that they knew. After a short wait, the doors swung open. A man in a red leather jacket walked out, and right behind him, wearing a fawning smile, was Lily. A few months had passed and Lily had clearly been doing well for herself. She spotted me, blinked, then let a sneer of undisguised contempt spread across her face. "Well, look who it is, Evan Lin. What's wrong? Couldn't make it out there, crawling back to join Inferno?" She still thought I was the same useless, pathetic wreck she had left behind. Blaze looked me over, and when his eyes landed on Lena and Sharp Blade Squad behind me, a flicker of wariness crossed his face, quickly buried under contempt. "Blue Bay Base? Never heard of it. We don't take in stragglers. Out of courtesy, since we're all survivors, leave your vehicle and supplies and get out." He said it with breathtaking arrogance. In his mind, his D-rank pyrokinesis ability made him untouchable. Lily rode his coattails, piling on with glee. "You hear that, Evan? For old time's sake, I'm telling you, don't push it. The way you are now, you're not even fit to carry Blaze's shoes." I looked at her smug, petty little face and laughed. "Lily, do you remember the empty noodle cup you threw at me?" Lily blinked, confused. She had no idea why I was bringing that up. "What noodle cup? I don't remember that. Just get out of here. You're in the way." My smile dropped. My eyes went cold. "You don't remember? I remember perfectly. I came here today to make you eat it." Lily reacted as if she'd just heard the most absurd thing in her life, pointing at me and bursting out laughing. "Evan, have you lost your mind? Make me eat a noodle cup? On what grounds?" Blaze crossed his arms and sneered. "Big words from a little nobody. Looks like I'll have to teach you exactly how painful a mistake this is." Before the words had even faded, a blazing fireball coalesced in his palm, radiating tremendous heat. Sharp Blade Squad immediately shifted into defensive positions. Only Lena and I stayed perfectly still, watching the fireball in his hand. I shook my head. "Is that all you've got? Pathetic." I raised my hand. The roaring fireball in Blaze's palm went out like a candle in the wind. With a soft puff, it simply vanished. The smirk on Blaze's face froze solid. He stared at his empty palm in disbelief. What just happened? Where's my fire? He tried to summon his ability again and again, but not even the faintest flicker of flame came. His prized D-rank pyrokinesis ability was gone. What did you do to me?" Blaze jabbed a shaking finger at me, his voice cracking with panic. I didn't answer. I simply turned my gaze to Lily, who had gone pale with fear. "Now, on what grounds?" Lily's lips trembled, all color drained from her face. She didn't fully understand what had just happened, but she had seen with her own eyes that Blaze's terrifying ability had simply stopped working in front of me. Fear had robbed her of every word. Lena grabbed her by the collar and dropped her at my feet. She hit the ground on her knees, sobbing and begging through tears and snot. I looked at the spectacle and felt nothing. I reached into my pocket and pulled something out. A flattened instant noodle cup, beef-flavored, the exact one she had thrown at me. I had kept it all this time. In my hand, the empty cup became a brand new sealed cup of noodles in an instant. I tore it open and emptied out the noodle cake and seasoning packets, leaving only the empty paper bowl, which I set down in front of Lily. Lily stared at the empty bowl on the ground. Her face looked worse than a corpse. She knew I wasn't joking. With trembling hands, she picked up the bowl and, with everyone watching, forced herself to eat it. Tears and mucus streaked down her face. Blaze watched the whole scene unfold and finally understood just what kind of person he had provoked. His legs gave out beneath him and he sank to his knees too. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on Lily, watching quietly until she had swallowed every last piece of the bowl, wrapper and all. The fall of Inferno Base was even simpler than I had expected. With their leader broken and their ability users terrified of what I could do, they surrendered with almost no resistance at all. I merged the two bases. Blue Bay Base became the most powerful survivor faction in the eastern half of the city. With the matter of Lily finally put to rest, I poured all my energy into developing the base and researching the limits of my ability. If word got out that I could cure the zombie virus, it would shake the entire world. Until I was strong enough to protect myself, that secret had to stay buried. I established a secret medical lab, managed by my parents, dedicated to treating those who had been infected but could still be saved. Every person I cured became deeply grateful, and the most devoted supporters I had. My influence grew like a snowball, expanding without anyone quite realizing it. Along the way, I encountered other survivor factions. To those who were allies, I offered supplies and support. To those who were enemies, I showed no mercy. The name Evan Lin became a legend. Some called me a god who saved lives. Others called me a demon who ended them. But no matter what they said, no one could deny one truth. I stood at the very top of this apocalypse. In the 5th year of the apocalypse, Blue Bay Base had grown into a massive city of 100,000 people. We had a fully developed defense system, self-sufficient agriculture, and a functioning society with restored order. Here people smiled again. And I, the creator and guardian of this city, rarely appeared in public. Most of my time was spent at the top of the tallest tower in the city's center, looking out over everything I had built. My ability had long since evolved beyond recognition. I no longer needed to touch anything. I could refresh everything within my line of sight. I could refresh a barren stretch of land and make it fertile. I could refresh a contaminated water source and make it clean. My power was drawing closer and closer to that of a true god. Lena was now the supreme commander of the City of Hope. She stood behind me and delivered her report. My lord, the zombie horde from the west is closing in. At its center is something we have never seen before, a sentient S-rank mutant zombie. An S-rank is the highest level catastrophe the apocalypse can produce. It has the power to destroy an entire city. At those words, my gaze cut through the vast distance, and I saw it, a black tide of hundreds of millions of zombies blotting out the sky, and at its center, seated on a throne of bones like an emperor, the S-rank mutant. It seemed to sense my gaze. Crimson eyes met mine across the vast distance. A crushing wave of psychic pressure surged toward me across 100 miles. Lena let out a stifled grunt, her face draining to white in an instant, but I simply gave a light wave of my hand, and the pressure dissolved into nothing. Are you ready? Lena drew a deep breath, her eyes steady and resolute. The City of Hope stands with you, to the very end. I smiled and shook my head. No, we're not going to fall. I turned and looked at her, and at every person in the city. This apocalypse, it's time for it to end. I walked out of the City of Hope alone, and stood on the city wall, facing the zombie horde that looked ready to swallow the world whole. 100,000 citizens watched me through massive screens inside the city. They were tense, afraid, but more than anything they trusted me. The S-rank mutant let out a shriek that could tear a soul apart, and commanded the horde to launch its full assault. I slowly raised both arms wide, as if I meant to embrace the entire world. Everyone watching thought I was about to unleash some world-ending attack, but they were wrong. There was no killing intent on my face, only a quiet compassion. My ability was never meant for destruction. It was meant for rebirth. I closed my eyes and released every last drop of my power, holding nothing back, not aimed at any single zombie, not aimed at any single region, but aimed at this entire broken, ravaged, dying world. Time itself seemed to stop. A white light, vast and gentle beyond all description, radiated outward from me, and spread across the entire world. Wherever the light touched, the raging zombies stopped in their tracks. Their decaying bodies began to heal, their clouded eyes cleared, and the violence and bloodlust in their gaze was replaced by confusion and humanity. The light swept across the earth, and tender green grass pushed up through the cracked dead ground. The gray haze lifted, revealing a deep blue sky that the world had not seen in years. The S-rank mutant on its bone throne watched its own body change with growing horror. It fought back with everything it had, but it could not stop. The force of a power rooted in the very laws of the world itself. In the end, it too was restored to a human form, staring at its own hands in bewilderment. The entire world had been refreshed. Every person infected by the virus was restored to normal. Every landscape shattered by the apocalypse came back to life. It was as if the 5-year nightmare had been nothing but a dream. Inside the City of Hope there was absolute silence. Everyone stared through their screens, watching this miracle unfold in stunned disbelief. No one knew how much time passed. Then one person broke down in tears of joy, then another, until a roar of celebration shook the entire city and echoed across the reborn world. They were calling my name. I stood on the city wall and felt the warm breeze. I turned around, and I saw Lena. I saw my parents. I saw countless faces filled with joy and hope. I smiled. The noodle cup in front of me could be refreshed without end, and so could the world beneath my feet.